to have you join me on Global News and Zuma Nigeria. Let's begin with North Korea launches 2 missiles, one possibly fell on land. On elections in the United States, Biden urged by family to remain in presidential race. On elections again, France's far-right celebrates lead aims for majority. Chinese rocket crashes after accidental ground launch. And Russia avoids fighting NATO, wages hybrid war instead. South Korea's military said North Korea has fired 2 ballistic missiles and the second may have failed and blown up, possibly raining debris inland. Monday's launches came a day after Pyongyang assured of offensive and overwhelming reactions to fresh military exercises staged by the United States, South Korea and Japan. The missiles were launched 10 minutes apart in a northeasterly direction from the town of Jaegyeon in southeastern North Korea, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said in a statement. The military said the first missile flew 600 kilometers, 370 miles, and the second for 120 kilometers, 75 miles, but did not say where they landed. North Korea typically fires missiles towards its eastern waters, but the second missile's flight distance was too short to reach that far. They seem to have problems with the second missile, and that if it exploded, its debris would probably have scattered on the ground, Joint Chiefs of Staff spokesperson Lee Sung-jun said later. Reports from South Korean citing unidentified South Korean military sources said it was highly likely the second missile crashed in an inland area of North Korea while the first one landed in the waters of the country's eastern city of Jongchon. Monday's launches were the first from the North Korea in 5 days and came as US, South Korea and Japan ended their Freedom Edge exercises, new multi-domain trilateral military drills. Pyongyang typically frames such maneuvers as rehearsals for an invasion or proof of the country's hostility. Leif Erik Isley, professor of international studies at the Ewha Women's University in Seoul, said in an emailed comment, in both North Korean politics and military policy, the best defense is often a good offense. Pyongyang is also determined not to appear weak while South Korea conducts defense exercises with Japan and the United States. North Korea launched what it called a multi-warhead missile in the first known test of a developmental last Wednesday. Advanced weapon meant to defeat US and South Korean missile defenses, although South Korea disputed the claim. It said Pyongyang had launched what appeared to be a hypersonic missile, but it spiraled out of control and exploded. On Friday, North Korea started a major ruling party meeting to determine what it called important immediate issues related to works to further enhance Korean-style socialism. Observers said the meeting was continuing on Monday. On election matters in the United States, the family of United States President Joe Biden has told him to stay in the race for a second term in office in spite a dreadful debate performance as some family members criticized how his staff had prepared him for last week's face-off against challenger Donald Trump. Biden spent Sunday at Camp David, the presidential retreat in Maryland, with the First Lady Jill Biden, his children and grandchildren. While the journey was planned previously for a shoot with photographer for the upcoming Democratic National Convention, it also became an exercise in trying to figure out how to control party anxiety following Thursday's dismissal showing. While his family was aware of how poorly the 81-year-old performed against Trump, they also think he remains the best person to beat the Republican and that he is capable of doing the job of president for another 4 years, reports said, citing people who asked to remain anonymous because they were not authorized to speak publicly about the internal issues. Joe Biden and his son Hunter, the people he listens to the most in the world, were among the most vocal supporters, reports added. According to more reports, quoting people close to the situation, they also said that Biden's family was urging him to stay in the race and keep fighting. Some of the family privately expressed exasperation at how his staff had prepared him for Thursday night's event. Calls for Biden to step aside have continued since Thursday when the president appeared raspy, trailed off, and at times gave complicated answers. According to a CBS News poll conducted in the 2 days following the debate, almost 3/4 of registered voters in the U.S. now believe Biden should not be running for president, including 46% of Democrats. The day after the debate, more reports also called on Biden to step aside. Still sticking with electoral matters, France's far right is in pole position after the first round of parliamentary polls that confirmed their dominance in French politics and brought them to the gates of power. Supporters of Marine Le Pen's anti-immigration National Rally RN applauded as she said the president's Macronistic bloc has been all but wiped out. RN won 33.1% of the vote, with a left-wing alliance behind on 28% and the Macron camp behind on 20.76%. 28-year-old RN party leader Jordan Bardella said, "I aim to be prime minister for all the French people if the French gives us their votes." Never before has the far right won the first round of a French parliamentary election. The simple fact that it has become possible is historic, says veteran commentator Alain Duhamel. What Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella want is an absolute majority of 289 seats in the 577-seat National Assembly. Seat forecast for next Sunday's second runoff votes suggest they may fall short. France will have a hung parliament and RN will be incapable to push through its plans for immigration, tax cuts and law and order without an absolute majority. There was no need for Emmanuel Macron to call this election, but after RN's victory in European elections, he said it was the most responsible solution. It was a wager that now threatens to turn the political order on its head, with 10.6 million French citizens voting for RN and some of the conservative Republicans who supported them. Turnout at 66.7% was the highest for a parliamentary first round since 1997, replicating the key nature of a vote that came after a lightning-quick campaign of barely 3 weeks. Already after the first round, 37 National Rally MPs have been elected by winning over half the vote, while 32 have been elected for the left-wing New Popular Front. Hundreds of left-wing voters assembled in Place de la République in Paris to voice their anger and shock at RN's success. President Macron left the talking to his Prime Minister Gabriel Attal, but he did issue a statement saying the time had come for a broad, clearly democratic and Republican alliance for the second round. While other leaders addressed cheering supporters, Attal made a short solemn address outside his residence at Hotel Matignon. Away from electoral matters now, company Space Pioneer said in a statement that a Chinese rocket crashed after being accidentally launched during a ground test on Sunday. The crash took place when the first stage of the Tianlong 3 rocket detached from its launch pad during a test due to structural failure. It landed in a hilly area of the city of Gongying in central China. Space Pioneer, also known as Beijing Tianbing Technology, said due to the structural failure of the connection between the rocket body and the test platform, the first stage rocket was separated from the launch pad. After liftoff, the onboard computer was automatically shut down and the rocket fell into the deep mountains 1.5 kilometers, 0.9 miles southwest of the test platform. The rocket body fell into the mountain and disintegrated. There were no casualties as a result of the crash, the company said, as people in the area were evacuated in advance of the rocket test. Space Pioneer is a leading company in the commercial rocket sphere, specializes in liquid propellant rockets. It successfully launched its Tianlong 2 rocket in 2023, making the company China's first commercial launch operator to send a liquid carrier rocket into space and successfully enter orbit, according to reports. Tianlong 3, the rocket that crashed on Sunday, is a huge liquid carrier rocket. It was made to aid construct China's satellite internet network. According to Space Pioneer, the rocket's product performance is comparable to SpaceX's Falcon 9, adding that it will be capable of launching the rocket over 30 times per year after the rocket's first successful flight. The accident comes just days after China's Chang'e 6 lunar module returned to Earth from space, where it collected the first ever samples from the far side of the moon. The mission was a major milestone in China's internal dream, as articulated by Chinese leader Xi Jinping, to establish the country as a dominant space power, and comes as a number of countries, including the United States, also increased their own lunar exploration programs. Czech Prime Minister Petr Fiala disclosed that it was very likely that Moscow was behind a failed attempt to burn a bus garage in Prague earlier this month. The unsuccessful arson attack didn't draw much attention until this. The accusation triggered alarm among security officials and government because numerous similar incidents have occurred across Europe in recent months. The Museum of Occupation in Riga was aimed in an arson attack in February. A London warehouse burnt down in March, and a shopping centre in Warsaw went up in flames in May. Police in Germany arrested many people alleged of planning explosions and arson attacks in April, and French authorities launched an anti-terror investigation after detaining a suspected bomb maker who was wounded in a botched explosion earlier this month. Several hacking attacks and spying incidents have been reported in different European countries. At the same time, the European Union has accused Russia and Belarus of weaponizing migration by pushing asylum seekers from third countries to its borders. There have also been numerous suspicious attacks against individuals. A Russian defector was found shot dead in Spain, and an opposition figure exiled in Lithuania was brutally attacked with a hammer. The seemingly random attacks have one thing in common. According to local officials, they are all connected to Russia. And while they might look minor in isolation, taken together, these incidents amount to what security experts say is Russia's hybrid war on the West. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said during an event in Canada last week that we are threatened by something which is not a full-fledged military attack, which are these hybrid threats, everything from meddling in our political processes, undermining the trust in our political institutions, disinformation, cyber attacks, and sabotage actions against critical infrastructure. Rod Thornton, a senior lecturer in defense studies at King's College in London, said there's been a pattern of attacks linked back to Russia. There has definitely been an increase over the last few months in these particular types of operations. It is something that Russians are ramping up, Thornton said. Moscow has not claimed responsibility for any of the attacks, but Russian President Vladimir Putin has made it clear he sees the war in Ukraine as part of a broader conflict with NATO, and that his regime sees the government in Kyiv as a mere proxy of the West. And with every addition of Western aid to Ukraine, whether through new weapons deliveries or the imposition of new sanctions on Russia, the Kremlin has ramped up its saber rattling. Thornton said Russia was resorting to a campaign of sabotage as an alternative to a full-on war with NATO, which will be disastrous for Russia. Article 5 is the cornerstone principle that an attack on one member of NATO is an attack on all members. It's only been invoked once after the 9/11 terrorist attacks on the United States by Al-Qaeda. Thornton said that by deliberately keeping the attacks below the threshold of armed conflict, Russia is hoping to sow more divisions within NATO because there is no clear blueprint on how to act. Now on more stories, US bases in Europe on high alert for terror threat. Over the weekend, many US military bases across Europe were put on an intensified state of alert, with the level of force protection raised to its second highest state amid concerns that a terrorist attack will target US military personnel or facilities, according to two US officials. The bases, including the US Army garrison in Stuttgart, Germany, where US European Command is headquartered, raised their alert level to Force Protection Condition Charlie on Sunday, the official said. According to the US Army, that status applies when an event occurs or intelligence is received indicating some form of terrorist action or targeting against personnel or facilities is likely. One of the US officials who is stationed at a base in Europe said, according to reports, that they haven't seen this threat level in at least 10 years and said it usually means the military has received an active, reliable threat. A spokesperson for US European Command, Dan Day, declined to comment on specific force protection levels when asked about the shift, but he said USCOM is constantly assessing a variety of factors that play into the safety of US military community abroad. As part of that effort, we oftentimes take additional steps to ensure the safety of our service members. For operational security reasons, we will not get into specific measures, but we remain vigilant. They added that UCCOM frequently monitors the security environment to ensure its personnel are informed and best postured to assure the safety of their individual person, family and loved ones. As always, UCCOM advises personnel in the European theatre to remain vigilant and stay alert at all times. It is not clear what intelligence took the heightened security, but European authorities have warned of a potential terror threat on the continent, especially ahead of the Paris Olympics in July, during the current European Football Championships in Germany. The German government brought in 580 international police officers to assist with security alongside German officers. Nancy Faeser, Interior Minister, said ahead of the tournament, "We are preparing ourselves for all conceivable dangers from Islamist terrorists to violent criminals and hooligans." France has also prepared for the possibility of a potential terror threat to the Olympic Games, which began in just under a month. Since March, France has raised its national security alert system to the highest level, according to the U.S. Embassy in France. On natural disaster, Hurricane Beryl nears Caribbean as deadly Category 3 storm. On Monday, Hurricane Beryl is anticipated to bang into the Caribbean as a powerful Category 3 storm, endangering many island communities with life-threatening storm surge, violent winds, and flash flooding. The hurricane's core is most at risk of striking Canada, St. Vincent or Grenadines beginning early Monday morning. Beryl is likely to remain a major hurricane as it barrels through the wind-worn islands on Monday and continues moving through the Caribbean early this week. Beryl's arrival marks an exceptionally early and likely devastating beginning to the Atlantic hurricane season. On Sunday, it reached Category 4 strength, making it the earliest storm of such strength on record in the Atlantic Ocean and the only Category 4 storm ever recorded in the month of June. By early Monday, the storm had reduced slightly to a Category 3. If Beryl regains some of its strength, it is poised to be the strongest storm the area has seen since Hurricane Ivan in 2004. Islanders were scrambling to finish final emergency preparations Sunday night, even as tropical storm force winds approached. Local officials are warning of potential catastrophic effects, including damage to homes, widespread power outages, and threats to residents' safety. Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves said, "I want everybody in St. Vincent and Grenadines to take this matter very seriously. There are some persons who are hoping for the best, and we must all do that, but we all have to prepare for the worst." Beryl is ushering in a strangely early beginning to a hurricane season that forecasters have warned will be hyperactive, and Beryl's record-shattering activity may be a sign of what's to come. The season is already off to a busy start as a second storm, Tropical Storm Chris, is turning in the Gulf of Mexico and is expected to hit Mexico's eastern coast early on Monday. Coming to African scenes, Ramaphosa announces unprecedented unity cabinet. Cyril Ramaphosa, South African president, named a new cabinet on Sunday evening after his African National Congress ANC, the former major opposition party, and 9 other parties agreed on the makeup of a coalition government of South Africa's 7th administration following weeks of haggling. Ramaphosa's announcement of his latest unprecedented multi-party cabinet came a month after the ANC lost its 30-year political dominance of Africa's most industrialized country in a national election, forcing it to seek coalition partners. The ANC's share of the vote slumped to 40% in the May 29th vote, and it lost its parliamentary majority for the first time since it came to power at the end of the apartheid system of white minority rule in 1994. Ramaphosa's party retained the biggest share of ministerial positions as he appointed ANC officials to 20 of the 32 cabinet minister roles in the new coalition. But there were 6 ministers from the Democratic Alliance, once the major opposition and the fiercest critic of the ANC, and Ramaphosa shared out the remaining ministerial posts among some of the smaller parties. The DA won the second largest share of the vote with 21%. Others have also joined with what the ANC called the Government of National Unity that is open to any of the 18 parties represented in Parliament. Some have refused to take part. In some of his most significant cabinet decisions, Ramaphosa reappointed Paul Mashatile of the ANC to continue as his deputy president. Ramaphosa also appointed Paxtal of the ANC as the Minister of Trade and Industry, an important portfolio that the EA was seeking and was at the heart of some of the tensions between the two parties. DA leader Steenhuisen was appointed Minister of Agriculture, while Ramaphosa also brought the leaders of the 4 other political parties into his cabinet as new ministers. Now I'll go on a short break, and when I come back, I'll bring you stories from Nigeria. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. Now Zuma Nigeria, and we begin with insecurity matters. Tinubu, Atiku, others condemn bomb attacks in Borno. President Bola Tinubu and one of his major contenders in the last poll, Atiku Abubakar, have criticized the suicide bombing attacks that reportedly killed at least 18 people in some parts of Gozo local government area of Borno State. While Tinubu declared the incident as an act of terrorism, Atiku charged the federal government not to let the Northeast region to slide back into a theater of terrorism and extreme violence. The president, in a statement released by his media aide Ajuri Ngalale, however, said the attacks were a clear manifestation of the military onslaught against the terrorists and the success achieved in degrading their capacity to launch offensives to launch the offensives. The purveyors of wanton violence shall have a certain encounter with justice, he stated, reiterating his government is taking necessary measures to secure Nigerians. He further stressed that efforts will be redoubled to make sure that those who trouble the nation, dispatching precious lives and disrupting law and order, are completely removed. Tinubu sympathized with the victims of the attacks, the families of the deceased, as well as the government and people of Borno State. In a statement, the U.S. mission in Nigeria described the Saturday bomb attack as an act of violence, show a cruel and heartless regard for human life. The diplomatic mission thus promised its partnership with Nigeria as it works to defeat terrorism and bring the perpetrators of this heinous act to justice. Amnesty International on its own described the attacks as vicious and unlawful and demonstrated a contemptible disregard for human life. And finally, on the news, NDLEA seizes 7.35 billion naira codeine, makes multiple arrests. Operatives of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency NDLEA have intercepted a major shipment of codeine syrup at the Port Harcourt Port Complex on Rivers State. The seizure, which involves 6,125 cartons containing 1,050,000 bottles of the opioid, is valued at over 7.35 billion naira. The operation was conducted on Saturday, June 29, 2024, following weeks of assiduous tracking and intelligence gathering by a special NDLEA unit. The unit collaborated with the Port Harcourt Port Command and other security agencies, including the Customs Service, to carry out a 100% joint examination of 6 targeted containers. This was revealed in a statement by Director Media and Advocacy of NDLEA Femi Babafemi in Abuja on Sunday. According to him, in Lagos, NDLEA officers at Murtala Mohammed International Airport apprehended 2 passengers journeying to Doha on a Qatar Airways flight after they tested positive for ingesting illicit substances. The suspects, Okyomu Daniel, alias Oladapo Olarawaju, and Ayigboro Wahid Omobolaji, were placed in observatory custody. Daniel excreted 90 wraps of cocaine weighing 1.022 kg, while Ayigoro discharged 60 wraps weighing 662 grams. Further investigation revealed that Daniel had stolen his late uncle's identity to obtain a Schengen visa. On June 28, 2024, the NDLEA operative recovered 40.32 kg of loud, a protein strain of cannabis, from an abandoned black Toyota Tacoma truck along Lekki Ikoyi Road. The driver fled upon noticing the operatives' pursuit. A recap of major stories says North Korea launches 2 missiles, one possibly fell on land. Biden urged by family to remain in presidential race. France's far right celebrates lead aims for majority. Chinese rocket crashes after accidental ground launch, and Russia avoids fighting NATO, wages hybrid war instead. And that's all on the news. Thanks for watching and have a beautiful week ahead. Bye for now.